As we reach the end of the year, it becomes time to reflect on the past year, and I wanted to reflect on legendary creatures printed this year. To be honest, I couldn't decide if I wanted to do a top 10 most powerful or top 10 favorite commanders, so I decided to just do half of each. So here are my 5 most powerful commanders from this year, and my 5 favorite. And these are in no particular order, by the way. Talon the Kindly Lord has proven to be one of the strongest commanders around. 2 blue-black for a 3/4 fairy noble with flying. As Talon enters the battlefield, choose a number between 1 and 10. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number, they lose 2 life and you draw a card. This card is seeing a ton of play in CDH. By naming 1 or 2, the Talon player can easily get a ton of value, since in competitive Commander, most decks are full of 1 and 2 drops. But even outside of competitive tables, I think this commander is really powerful. Naming 3 or 4 can easily let you draw a massive amount of cards. And in blue, there's tons of fun things you can do, with clone effects or copy effects that let you make multiple copies of your commander, allowing you to name multiple numbers and draw a ton of cards. This commander is quite powerful and really fun to build around. I feel like a lot of people underestimate the Balrog Durans Bane. 5 black-red for a 7/5 avatar demon. Cost 1 less for each permanent sacrifice this turn. Haste can't be blocked except by legends, and when the Balrog dies, destroy target artifact or creature an opponent controls. I think part of the reason people underestimate this commander is because the cost gets reduced for each permanent sacrificed, not just you. So playing aristocrats and sacrificing your tokens or whatever only gives you 1/4 of the power. If you really want to crank up the power level of this deck, cards like Pox or Wildfire are really devastating. There are a ton of cards that will force your opponents to sacrifice their mana resources, making it easy to cast your commander multiple times even with minimal lands in play. Something like Wildfire will make your commander cost 16 mana less. So even if you've cast it multiple times, you're still casting your commander for like 2 mana. And with Haste, you can easily keep slamming people for 7 commander damage. And if they don't have a legend to block it, that's just 7 damage they can't deal with. And if they do manage to kill your commander after you blew up some of their lands, you get to destroy one of their mana rocks and then blow up even more of their lands to just recast your commander. A Rakdos stacks deck with this commander is very powerful and can be super devastating. Much of the machines team-up creatures had a lot of weird cards, but I think Croxa and Cyanos is the most powerful one. Mardu in 3 for an Elder Giant Dog with Vigilance, Menace, and Lifelink. When they enter the battlefield or attack, you may exile 5 cards from your graveyard. If you do, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's a 6/6. So to start off, this is a 1-card combo. You always have access to your commanders, so if you just find Altar of Dementia, you can win the game. What you do is you cast Altar of Dementia and you play your commander. With your commander's trigger on the stack, sacrifice to the altar, targeting yourself. This will have you mill 6 cards. Then, exile 5 of those cards and use Croxa's ability to reanimate itself. And then, when it comes into play, with the trigger on the stack again, you're going to repeat this loop, each time going up 1 additional card in your graveyard. And then just mill your entire library, but since you're not in blue, you're not going to be winning with Thassa's Oracle. There are many different lines to win from here, but as a suggestion, you could reanimate Necrotic Ooze with the last trigger. If you have Necrotic Ooze in play, and let's say Anger in the graveyard as a haste enabler, then Palladium Mirror, Pilla-Palla, and Walking Ballista will allow you to generate infinite mana, put infinite counters on the Ooze, and remove those counters for infinite damage. This combo is incredibly compact, because unless you had 0 cards in your graveyard, and you happen to hit multiple of these combo pieces on the first mill of 6, it's essentially an automatic win as soon as your commander and the Dementia are in play. But you don't even need to combo for this commander to be powerful. It reanimates on ETB and attack. So again, with haste enablers like Anger, you can cast your commander, reanimate something, attack, reanimate something else. Martyr Reanimator is a really powerful archetype, and this commander is excellent for it. If you want to learn more about the Reanimator archetype, take a look at my video about it here. I got my butt kicked by the Sidar Jabari of Zafir Precon deck. It's actually pretty powerful right out of the box, and a lot of that is because of the commander. Esper in 1 for a 4/3 human knight with Eminence. Whenever you attack with 1 or more knights, if Sidar is in the command zone or on the battlefield, draw a card, discard a card. Flying First Strike. Whenever Sidar deals combat damage to a player, return a knight from your graveyard to the battlefield. Eminence is just such a busted ability. You attack with your knights and get free value throughout the game for essentially no effort. And then later in the game, you just cast your commander and get even more value by reanimating any of the knights you discarded or that simply got destroyed throughout the course of the game. He lets you rebuild really well after a board wipe, which is so good for a tribal deck that often wants to go wide. This commander is pure value. It is very powerful and probably one of the best choices for knights in my opinion. If you want, pick up the precon. It's got a lot of great things in there, and some small upgrades can really turn that into a very powerful deck. And the last powerful commander I want to talk about is Tracka Grand Unifier, which is a card that got a lot of people talking. 3 green, white, blue, black for a Phyrexian Angel 7/7 with Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink. When Tracka enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For each card type, you may put a card from that type among the revealed cards into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This is the first mentioning of Battle as a card type when it was spoiled. Ironically, battles have nothing to do with why this card is actually good. With that pile of keywords and a 7/7 body, this is really strong on board. But the card advantage from that ETB is insane. That trigger can easily draw you 4 more cards. It's not uncommon to find 1 land, creature, instant, sorcery, and then maybe an artifact or enchantment among the top 10 cards. This commander is phenomenal in a blink deck, and you have access to so many powerful ETB effects in these colors. It is very easy to cast a mass flicker effect in this deck and get more value than you know what to do with. This commander is slightly held back by its high mana cost, but since you're in green, is it really that big of a deal? So those are my 5 most powerful commanders from this year, but there's some other commanders which are not as strong but I think are more fun that I would like to talk about. So these are my personal favorite legends from the year. But before that, if you like videos like this, consider subscribing. It really helps. Thank you. Starting off with the Red God, Osier Axanil Deepest Might. Now, all the Ixalan gods are pretty cool, but the red one is my favorite as a commander. 2 red for a 4/4 god with trample. If a red source you control would deal an amount of non-combat damage less than Axanil's power to an opponent, that now deals damage equal to Axanil's power instead. When Axanil dies, return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. It is the land Temple of Power on the other side. Taps for a red, pay 2 and a red, transform the temple, activate only if red sources you control dealt 4 or more non-combat damage this turn, only has a sorcery. There are some awesome ways to take this commander. You can go Storm with Gutter Snipe effects or Grape Shot and cast many instances sorceries, rituals, little cantrips to then blast your opponents with a ton of non-combat damage. Unarmed Storm is a pretty fun archetype, and there are multiple ways to take it with multiple commanders, and this is just another new option if you want damage in the command zone. But if you don't want to go Storm, you could play ping effects. There are tons of creatures that tap to deal damage, and I think pinging decks are just kind of silly fun. It's a weird archetype that really only shows up in Commander. It's not very powerful, but this commander basically quadrupling the damage of your pingers can be really good. And if you're able to buff them in any way, it gets even better. You can also play with stuff like mana barbs to really make your opponents pay for their spells. If you want to burn out the table, give this commander a try. Nive Supreme is not a very good command. Wooburg for a 5/5 dragon avatar, flying, hexproof from monocolored, and each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard that is exactly 2 colors has jumpstart. The hexproof from monocolored barely ever comes up, like it blocks Path and Beast Within, but doesn't stop board wipes or many other removal spells. Giving your 2 color instances and sorceries jumpstart is not even that good, but I am obsessed with this idea of a graveyard Spellslinger deck with cards like Secrets of the Dead and Savine, and then you cast spells from the graveyard to get extra value with Tormod. I built the deck and it is fun and goofy, but I lost so many games with it, and it's just because the commander doesn't do enough. Like, there's a bunch of these random graveyard synergy cards that I can utilize, and the commander is interesting to build around, it's just not very powerful. Because Niv Mizzet lets you cast spells from the graveyard, but doesn't give you value for doing so, and there's already so many spells that can cast themselves from the graveyard that already have Jumpstart or Flashback, that giving this ability to stuff isn't as useful as something that gives you value for casting things from the graveyard. But I wanted to put it on this list because it's an interesting card, and if you are in a slower meta or you're looking to build a lower powered deck, maybe Nive Supreme is for you, because it is a fun deck. So to power up my Nive deck, I built Aragorn the Uniter. Red, green, white, blue for a 5/5 human noble. Whenever you cast a white spell, create a 1/1. When you cast a blue spell, scry 2. When you cast a red spell, deal 3 damage to target opponent. When you cast a green spell, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. And this was my Multicolor Matters Spellslinger deck. This commander asks you to just play a bunch of fun 3-color cards and get extra value for it, which I was here for. This commander is awesome. I had a lot of fun playing it for a while as a Spellslinger commander. But you don't need to cast instants and sorceries. I leaned into the blue and red effects as a sort of counterburn, extra card advantage with the scry type deck. But instead, you can make use of that green effect to buff up some multicolored creatures and beat down your opponent. If you want to jam a bunch of multicolored bulk rares, then this is a great commander for you. Graz's Unstoppable Juggernaut is one of the few colorless commanders we got last year, and I just like the card. 8 mana for a 7/5 Juggernaut. Juggernauts you control attack each combat if able. Juggernauts you control can't be blocked by walls. Other creatures you control have base power and toughness 5/3 and are Juggernauts in addition to the other creature types. This is a big reference to the original Juggernaut card, which was a 5/3 that attacks each combat and can't be blocked by walls. So he turns all your creatures into Juggernauts. What I really like about this card is it's an Anthem effect in colorless, so it lets you build colorless tokens as an archetype, which we really didn't have much of before. You can go wide with stuff like Mirror Battlesphere or Skittering Invasion, and then follow up with your commander to give a huge boost of power on board. But don't forget that Graz affects the base power and toughness of creatures. So a 0/0 that gets counters, or something that places counters like a Steel Overseer, will let your creatures get bigger than 5/3s. Also, he does turn your creatures into Juggernauts, meaning you can play Coat of Arm effects and buff up your team because they're all Juggernauts in addition to the other types. Not much else to say about this card. It's a pretty simple card all in all, but it is fun and silly if you want to go Juggernaut, Thopter, Tribal. Lastly, I really liked Troyan Gutsy Explorer. This card is really powerful for an uncommon commander who supports Simic Ramp or X spells. Green-blue 1 for a 1/3 Vidalcan Scout. Tap, add green-blue. Spend this mana only to cast spells with mana value 5 or greater, or spells with X in their mana cost. Pay a blue, tap, draw a card, discard a card. So I really like X spells. They're fun, and getting X to be as big as you can is just really enjoyable to me. My deck ramped and ramped hard so I could cast the silliest, biggest X spells I could. And at the end of the day, I'm a simple guy. Big number make me happy. Plus, this is a great budget commander. You just play this commander and ramp, which is generally pretty affordable. You ramp a ton, and then you can cast your silly big bulk rares really fast. Some of these cards might not be very good, but if you get them out early enough, they're still a threat. And then just throw in some counter spells to back it up, and that's a pretty cheap yet surprisingly effective budget commander deck. So those are my most powerful and favorite legends of the year, but there are literally hundreds more. So let me know some of your favorites in the comments below. And if you think I'm wrong about the most powerful commanders, also let me know. What do you think is stronger than these 5? Thank you so very much for watching. Subscribe for more.